From the Middle is proud to be a founding member of the Odd Pods Media Network. Hey, everybody, welcome to episode number 117 of From the Middle. I cannot wait to get into the meat of this week's episode. But before we do, if you're just joining us for the first time, we are really glad you're here. From the Middle is a comedy, culture, entertainment, and interview style podcast. We're three middle-class guys living in the middle of America, in the middle chapters of our lives, with a point of view that's somewhere in the middle. Our guest this week has a killer beard. Corey, what does that have to do with anything? Well, one of our sponsors makes killer men's grooming products, and their beard care game is on point. Artiest Man uses high quality, natural, and organic ingredients in their products, and you can get some by going to artiustman.com. That's ARTIUSMAN.com. Fill your cart with men's grooming and beard care products. Use promo code THEMIDDLE at checkout. That's THEMIDDLE at checkout to get 25% off of your first order. This episode is also brought to you by Stello Mints. Listen, my wife hates flying, and today, true story, she left for Colorado. Before she left, I gave her a tin full of Stello Mints just to help take some of the anxiety and edge out of her travel experience. Stello makes 3 tasty flavors of CBD mints packaged in really cool and stylish tins that you'll feel comfortable taking anywhere. To get yours, go to stellomints.com. That's STELLOMINTS.com and use promo code, once again, the middle at checkout to get 10% off all orders. I highly recommend the matcha flavor. They also have peppermint and lemon. Thank you, Stello Mints. All right, you guys know I love the History Channel's hit series Alone. I've talked about it on the podcast before. Anybody, frankly, that'll listen to me, I tell about this show. I think I've gotten Dylan and Kendall hooked now. My favorite contestant from this season that just ended, season 8, is a really cool guy from Ohio, now living in Michigan, named Nate Weber. And for some strange reason, he agreed to come onto the show and chat with us. Did you hear what I just said? We had a contestant from Alone on the show. We're coming up, baby. But seriously, I'm very excited to share this week's episode with you. Enjoy.
Oh, for the love. Sorry, just clearing my Mountain Dew hole.
I got my phone hole cleaned today.
That's where you keep it? You're so cerebral and you're so developed and evolved.
From the Middle after dark over here.
Nate, thank you so much for sitting down with us, man. We are super honored that you would grace us with your presence. We're big fans. And super excited to just sort of dive into chatting with you tonight about yourself, about your experience on Alone. So maybe just give us your own version of your bio. Tell us a little bit about yourself, perhaps something that folks who watched Alone don't already know.
Sure. I'm originally from Ohio, a small town in Northwest Ohio. I think you guys are familiar. So I did leave home at 17. The show got it wrong and said 16. I have no idea. I'd never spoken those words before, but nobody joins the military at 16. So I had to get on Reddit and clarify because people were going crazy. So I did have a little bit of a issue growing up, just a normal stuff. I would say it's normal for everybody, but we all struggle at some point. Mine had to do with parents and whatnot. So I was eager to leave my hometown and just get away, and the Navy was an opportunity. So I did 12 years Navy and Navy medicine, and then I switched over to Army aviation, and I did 12 more years as an Army aviator. So it was just kind of an easy choice for me to be in service. I just like that discipline and order, and I had a tendency growing up to be a violent person. So I was a really competitive wrestler and enjoyed collision sports and combat sports. So I kind of excelled at wrestling and football. So those were my two primaries. And then the military kind of let me feed into that. So I got to just continue that mindset. And then, life happens and you meet people and you have a lot of babies. And so you turn into a dad, and that's kind of where it's at. I mean, I've had business ventures along the way for aviation, and then and just enjoying retirement for the last 3 years, and trying to build this homestead up. I bought 40 acres in northern Michigan, and I'm just trying to develop it. Like, we're on schedule to get livestock and get our animals started next spring, which is exciting, but there's still just a ton of work to do. And again, life happens. So I think that video that you guys might have seen me and Clay and Jordan doing in Idaho, or that was in Montana, but we were teaching in the Bitterroot in Idaho. And while I was there, some stuff happened in my hometown, so I had to come back home and take over the harbor master job, which is, well, I don't know how I'm qualified, but maybe my Navy time.
Yeah.
So I'm now the harbor master, which I just kind of manage some folks and a gas dock and some transient and seasonal slips in the marina. So I'm doing that till the end of the season. It's a seasonal gig, and then I can get back to the homestead. But I'm killing it there, like a ton of hours. So it's fine, but it's helping my community, and that's really the whole point. I mean, the whole point for me being on the show was to challenge myself personally with my experiences, and then also, if it did come to me being at the end, that money was going back into my community, into a indoor recreation center for the kids and stuff, because we're a blue collar town up here, and single parent homes, just like I was growing up. So I think a lot of those kids, we tend to in this country frown upon the aggressive personalities and tend towards violence, instead of kind of bringing that in and saying, hey, learn how to control that, and here's some avenues, because we need those people. We need those kids that aren't afraid of aggression and have a little tendency. They turn out to be good, service members, and have to do the hard jobs if you can teach them how to control it. So yeah. I kind of want to do my part on that. So kind of that's where I'm at right now. I'm on the water all day. I'm working on my tan. So
well, it's looking good. There, you said a lot
sure.
there. There's so much I want to pick at. So from Wasion, thank you for your service, by the way. You said life happens and you had a bunch of kids. I think you said you have 5. Is that right?
I do have 5.
5 kids. Harbor Master. I think we just figured out the subtitle that we were talking about earlier for the episode with Harbor Master Nate Weber.
No. You could put interim in front of it. That's fine. Maybe.
That's awesome, man.
We'll see if I take it next year.
Tell me a little bit about, and I know it's kind of on hold while you're doing the interim harbor master thing, but tell me a little bit about the homesteading. And I know, like you said before we started recording, that's definitely a process. And I think that's something, like Dylan and I are from the country and sort of ended up in the suburbs, and some of us to varying degrees like idolize that type of life. We see shows like Alaska, The Last Frontier, and we're like,
sure,
man, that sounds really cool. I could do that. And then you drastically underestimate how much work that is. So at what level are you living off the land? Because there's varying degrees of that, right?
Right, there is. And I think that you can go full immersion, and people want to do that. There's levels of that also. So for me, spending 24 years in the military, you tend to move quite a few times. So what we did a couple times, at least 3 times, is that we sold everything we owned except for the family heirlooms. Everything. We just had a huge estate sale prior, and then we would dump everything. So the downsizing portion was already with us. We've already done that, where we didn't really hold on to material things, and we could just do with what the family had kind of passed down to us. So we kind of kept those items, and we could pack small and head out. So having done that a few times, the biggest obstacle for us was downsizing from a 2,600 square foot home to a 200 square foot tiny house. So I built that Freightliner so that we could travel the U.S. and find a place where we wanted to settle down, instead of picking one and moving there and not knowing for sure. And I wasn't interested in moving back to Ohio, to my hometown. There just wasn't anything left there for me. So we did settle up on northern Michigan, and that's where we found this 40 acres there's not a flat spot on the land, so that makes it difficult for pastures. There's like 150-year-old apple orchard on the land too that we found in an old homestead. So developing that was a lot of excavation and clearing trees and what we're going to do. And then there was no well on the property, no septic, so we had to go through that process. And then we agreed, the wife and I agreed that we would build the pole barn first. So I put up a 40 by 64 pole barn with 16-foot sidewalls. Now, that's kind of the logistics, is that you want to build the infrastructure first so that you can bring the animals, because I just feel like it's just potentially hazardous or sloppy to just start bringing in animals I can't care for properly. And I don't want to do that. I'm conservative when it comes to that. I want to make sure the animals are healthy. So we built this pole barn, and then I built a 1,600 square foot home in the back of it, 2-story. The back 20 feet by 40 feet is the house. So that's finished. I just haven't done my final out. I got to put some windows in upstairs for the boys, but that's it. So we've been living in it for over a year, I think, and so we're out of the tiny house. But the idea is the downsizing. It's can you leave all those things behind and be able to focus on the land and the animals and that process. And so I wanted to give us a big space to kind of step off from with the pole barn and the outbuildings and stuff like that, and get that organized before I go just bringing in animals and it gets messy. And I don't want to have that, because I think after the animals arrive, it's nonstop work, and I don't want to play catch up on that. I want to be ahead of it and be able to be forward thinking so that I can make the best of that and not waste anything. So I guess that would be the biggest issue, would be the downsizing. So, and just stepping out of that suburbia, if you want to take that step and get out of the city. I've never liked cities ever. It's too fast paced for me, and it's too many people, and I love to being out in the wild. And my wife does ask a lot, we should go camping, and I feel like I camp every day. Why would I'm in the most comfortable bed in the middle of the woods. Why do I have to put a tent out in my Well, I don't understand it. But anyways, that's where I'm at on the homestead, I guess. I'm long-winded.
I gotta jump back for just a second to the tiny space thing. You've now had a little distance between that and where you are. And the entertainment industry is kind of glorifying the tiny space movement right now. What do you have any opinions on like what you think the media world is getting right about tiny homes, and then like anything you think they're getting wrong? Because there's a lot of shows built up around it. There's a lot of articles about it. I mean, it's certainly being talked about.
No, I think it did. I think in the last 5 to 10 years, it's been really trendy. There's a certain generation, these younger kids are really into this mobile, no ties. And I think it's great. I mean, for those years, formidable years, when you're that 18 to 25, I think you shouldn't be making any major life decisions. At least that's what I tell my kids. It's just kind of like sow your oats and go out there and learn who you are before you go committing to anything that's major. So it means be smart, make good choices. But that's kind of a nomad lifestyle that they're living, this tiny house idea on trailers. They can just park it and go anywhere, these van conversions that people are doing, and it's great. I guess for them, that's fantastic because they're still searching, and that's the time to do it. But it's the difficulty is the middle-aged, where you have a family and you're like, I'm sick of this, we're just going to downsize and let's go to the small ones. But they don't really show those big families doing it. They show the couples or the young couple or the retirees, kids are grown and they're going to do a tree house or something small in their house, but they're going to step out of their 3,000 square foot house and put a tree house in the backyard. So I think that's a little bit odd, a little Hollywooded up when those shows show that. But the true dynamic that I really loved about the space was that it forces you outside. It's tiny house for sleeping and the necessities for the bathroom stuff, but do everything outside. Spend your time in nature and outside in the location, so pick it smart. I think that's, for me, why I chose it, is that confined space. So
you're being really thoughtful about how you develop your acreage up there in Michigan. And is that something that you saw growing up, or is that something you've just done a ton of reading about? How do you go through the methodology of deciding, okay, pole barn, then livestock, then this? Like, where are you learning all that?
So I think the decisions to do what we do, especially when you're in a relationship, a family, we always make life choices with the kids. They all get a vote. So everything we do has always been a family decision. So, I think that the process for me, at least what drives me to get from point A to point B, is that I just try to pay attention to myself. I try to figure out when I feel overrun, or I feel like I'm in a place where I don't belong. And I can endure, personally, I can endure a lot of crap. I can embrace the suck for a long time. But what wears on me is when my kids have to deal with that too, or my wife has to deal with that. So I'm always paying attention to everybody around me and myself. So I kind of guided myself into that, and it kind of being out in the wilderness or just being out in the wild and trying to just kind of form the land to fit our needs and stuff. That's always been fascinating to me. So I do a lot of research and study up on it, and I talk to people and I test, but I'm not afraid to fail. I think that's our biggest issue in today's society, is that fear is the only biggest obstacle that everybody puts in front of them, and they can't get around. The second, even fear of the failing or just fear of trying, it's so crazy. I've never had that issue. I don't complicate things. I don't think there is such a thing as failure. I just think there's learning, and if I chalk it up to a positive, then everything's easier. So I don't like to. We all make mistakes, but the mistake is to not try.
Yeah.
That's the only true mistake, is to not give it a shot. So
You said in one of the earlier episodes, if you don't accept failure as part of the journey, you'll never find success.
that's right.
And I wrote that down when you said that. And a couple things come to my mind as we're talking now. Even is you had mentioned before that you had some problems with aggression growing up, and how that seems to be today possibly an underreached or an underutilized group of young people. And I'm wondering, so what is that? Is there a thing that a trait, a characteristic there that is manifesting as aggression, but can be redirected? Because now you're saying things like there's not a whole lot of crap that gets to me, and you can turn fear into something positive. You seem to be an incredibly patient person.
I think.
Yeah.
I understand that. Yeah, it's a neat perspective, the way you put that. And maybe I haven't thought about it, but thinking about it now, that type of personality, so living on the edge or leaning forward in the saddle, that mentality. If you don't have control of it, you'll end up in trouble, right? So the idea is to harness that energy and that mindset, and that's what the best skilled operators are. Our top elite operators in the military, they're on the edge. They teeter on the edge of that violence, but they're under control. So it's a switch when you got to turn it on, and you know how to utilize your energy. So for me, my aggression, my 7th grade wrestling coach, junior high wrestling coach, saved my life. I mean, he saw my issues, knew where I came from. I was 80 pounds, so he knew he needed a lightweight, little 80-pounder in 7th grade. And he just read it right. And I asked, and I got on the team, and it's lights out after that. It was no turning back once I got taught that I was allowed to hurt these kids, but within these boundaries. So having been taught that you can use your aggression for a positive, but you can only do these things, that taught me limitations. My range fans were kind of set, and I started to realize that I'm in control of my energy. So I'd rather be positive all the time, no matter if negative's coming in. Like, I like to think of it as I'm a positive energy generator. So even if you're just throwing negativity at me, I'm happy to have it because it's just going to go into my power keg, and then I decide how that leaves me. I don't respond aggressively. I choose to if I need to, but I never just react. So I'd rather always lead with kindness and love and patience using your negative energy. So I'd rather calm you down with being calm and kind, because if I have to, if there's a threat, trust me, I can turn it on. That's not an issue. But I'd rather never get to that point. And so it does teach patience, I guess, absolutely, is for me to know my capabilities and my mentality and what I'm capable of physically and my aggression mentally. So I choose. Everything's a choice. And I just decided that I'm going to always choose love and kindness and patience, even though I'm capable of the other stuff. And I only need it, which turns out when you do that and you get the confidence and you understand yourself, you rarely ever, if ever, need to turn on the aggression. So, unless my wife got to see it. I say that, I smile and I say that because that's a bad lead-in, that my wife got to see my aggression. But I went to a Masters wrestling tournament where I had to wrestle again in my 30s or something, and she got to see that side of me she'd never seen before. Wow. So on the mat, that's a different story. In the circle, you get to see crazy. My eyes change. It's like shark eyes. It's really bad. So, but she got to see that, which is just interesting. That's good for her to see, to know all my talk and how I kind of express myself in that manner, to see that switch go off. So
I think that's what drew me to you on Alone specifically. You talked early in the season about sort of your life philosophy and this theme of positivity, and that you have a fundamental choice when a circumstance happens to either feed the negative beast or feed the positive.
Right.
And I think like early on in the season, I was already rooting for you because of that, like that quiet strength that like you can see that heart of a warrior, and you described yourself in that way, like beneath there, but like only when it needs to come out. And so that's why I was personally rooting for you early on. So how in the world do you decide, you know what, I'm going to go be on this reality show on History Channel? Like, how does that come up? Had you been watching? What's the story there?
So we had seen, I'd only watched season 1 and 2 when it was on Vancouver Island. And then just things happened and I was deployed or I was gone or something, and I stopped. We were out of the seasons, and I heard bits and pieces, or I heard someone killed a moose, and I was like, that's awesome, So I watched like a YouTube clip of him gutting the moose. So when I was in the military, I was always like, that'd be a cool challenge. It just fed it. Again, I was paying attention to what would be interesting to me, and I thought that would be a cool challenge to try to get on that show. And just to be able to have someone force you into a challenge. I'm all about the test. So I really liked the military because you go to a new school or something, and it was always a test. You had to pass this physically or mentally or whatever. And I really enjoyed someone else putting me in that situation, because we don't do that to ourselves. We don't test ourselves hard enough. We don't put ourselves in the elements that they're going to challenge us mentally as well as physically. So for me, it was appealing. And so in 2019, I applied. I was retired. I didn't have to worry about the logistics of military and being gone and getting leave and all that stuff. So I'd retired in 2017, and then I dropped my application, I think the summer or the spring of 19. And yeah, 19. And they cherry picked me for that Beast show. So Alone the Beast got popped, and I got this notification that they think they're all wrapped up casting for Alone season 7, but you'd be a good fit for this other show we're thinking about. So I jumped on that just as an opportunity, to just do it. Maybe it's another challenge. And that was a really good challenge, and it was really fun, and I met some really good people. But what I did on that show is that I treated it like my own Alone. They gave us cameras, and I videotaped myself nonstop. I built the shelter, a fireplace. I did another, in-ground dugout house. All kinds of stuff. Me fishing and transferring fire. A lot of stuff that didn't make the show because it was only 45 minutes of us. But I must have given them 150 hours of footage in 30 days of me. At night, I'd wake up and navigate by the stars and tell what time it was based on Polaris and the Big Dipper, and I'm just thinking they've got to see this. They've got to put me on alone, right? So
this is my audition tape.
That's exactly what I was doing, and it worked out. So
nice.
And then I called the casting director, and I said, "Hey, am I in some kind of training timeout? Am I allowed to apply for this season 8 of Alone?" And she said, "Hang on a second," and that was it. She said, "Send me some videos, answer some questions," and I did, and that was the rest is history. So
I think you'll find you already have the videos. Check all my footage that I submitted is what you're thinking.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping that she would do, but I had to make fire again and build a damn shelter. I was like, God, man, can you just look at my other footage? Just talk to the other people. So
is that the stuff that you sent in? Then is that the stuff that they use for B-roll when they're introducing the?
Yeah. That's a lot of that. A lot of that footage is the stuff we send in. So some of it's just cringe. You're just like, I don't know. I hate doing that stuff, but it's just
got to make sure I get the kids in there.
I do, and they're not sure. I can't get my wife in there. There's no way she's gonna get footage. So I'm like, babe, we gotta hug and say goodbye. And she's like, nope. I'm like, come on, you gotta go on TV. It's fine. It happens. So. But that's the whole side of it. You don't really get to see it's just the awkwardness of filming yourself, and it's just weird to get through that. But once you're into it, especially when you're out there, it's just second nature.
Did they, for season 8, did they do, because I know they've done this with other seasons, I think it was Mongolia, where they did a week or two in the area, getting you acclimated to the flora and fauna and all that. Did they do that for season 8 or no?
They do it for every season. So every season it's called an orientation, and it's 2 weeks long. But for this one, because it was COVID, we got 14 days of quarantine at a lakeside resort. I mean, it's twist my arm on that one, but
okay.
we were in the region, right? We were 90 miles, I think, about 90 miles north of Chilco Lake is where we were. But it's still the same climate, same, we learned, and the people that were hosting us were locals. So we did our research and due diligence. I was actually with Clay at the resort for our quarantine, and he was an alternate. So there was a UK fella that didn't make it over because of the Canadian and UK quarantine rules. So they bumped him, and they had to choose between the two alternates. I was with Dave Mead and Clay Hayes, and they picked Clay for that. So
during those 2 weeks, are you guys kind of assessing the other people and going what's their nature experience and sort of placing your own bets?
Oh, come on. Yeah, you do everything. You set up you pull your gear out, and they have to do a gear interview and inspect all the gear you chose because they got time to replace it. And I'm checking people's gear out and be like, no way, that's not going to last. That's going to be cold. I'm all judgy, I'm hoping for the worst in people. I'm like, you got to. That's that competitive nature, is that you're always looking for that flaw. But it's not like in a fight or anything where I look for a weakness, because I can't exploit it. It's all him. So I'm just looking at the choices they're making and going, okay, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say, you sure about that? I'm just going to be like, that's their choices. And most of the time I'm wrong. Most of the time my judgment on their items, they were probably pretty good items, but I was just trying to get something in my head, give myself extra confidence that I had some good stuff. But
well, the same is true for us at home. You're prejudging people.
You have to.
You're looking at stereotypes. You're looking at the items that they brought, and you're like, my money's on this guy. And then day one he taps, and you're like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
I think the only other contestant from Ohio was a police officer. I can't remember which season this was. And like the very first night, there was bear sign at his site, and he's like, "Yep, I'm out."
Oh yeah, I remember that. It was like day one. He's like, I knew there'd be bears, but I didn't know there'd be bears here with me. That's awesome.
I thought for sure the producers would have taken care of the bears.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly.
So kind of related with when you're with these other contestants and assessing their stuff and trying to kind of size them up a little bit, just for your own internal purposes. It sounds like you had said again when you were talking kind of during your intro, you were mentioning that all of the things that you don't have, all of the experience that you don't have, that you were saying, I'm not much of a bushcrafter, I'm not an angler, all those things, which now from talking to you makes me think that you were just being incredibly humble when you were saying those things. And certainly from watching you on the show,
I can tell the time from the stars, but I'm not an angler.
Well,
but no, all of that said, so the sort of the lack of expertise and all of the things that you had listed, but you said that you think that your strength is out of the box problem solving, and applying creativity to hard situations. I'm wondering if you think that if you had sort of a larger encyclopedia of fundamentals taught to you in your head, if those things would have almost hindered you because you would have gotten stuck on what you think should work in theory versus using your own creativity.
No, I think that's a great question. And I think if you look at and we'll talk a little bit about it, but in my childhood, it was my biological father. He was gone before I have memories of him being in my life. So my parents divorced. They were young. My mom was 20 with 2 kids in the 70s. So and then he was gone, and then she was with another man, and he adopted my sister and I. So, but he wasn't a dad. He was never there. He's a truck driver, so he was never there, and he didn't bother raising my daughter. My sister and I, he just raised his son, my younger brother. And these guys I'm friends with to today now. We've resolved any issues, and he understands, the loss of opportunity that he had. But I don't ever regret or look back and would never change my story. I would never go back and say, I wish I had a dad that, for your 20s, you do that. You're like, what did I miss out on? But you just don't realize what your potential is based on that. And you just hit it on the head I learned a lot about in my life up to this point is how we learn. And the one thing that always stuck with me is primacy. The first way you learn something is the way you're going to remember it forever. It's going to be really difficult for you to break that. And if I had a dad that taught me, this is how you tie a fishing knot, this is how you fish, this is how you do it, then I may have not explored other avenues or thought that was the limitation because dad showed me. And you get that mindset, not to disrespect fathers in that sense, because I have 4 sons and I'm that dad, but I want them to explore. I want them to open their mind. And my wife and I made a conscious choice when we got married, before we had children, that we were gonna let our children be free thinkers. We were always gonna let them have the opportunity to choose their path. So we didn't, religion wasn't an issue for us to kind of bring them into our fold. It wasn't that. We kind of guided them in moral, in the right place, what right looks like, and more on how it feels. Pay attention to yourself. So for me, it's absolutely true that had I had that structured upbringing, it may have been a detriment to my creativity or my ability to think outside the box, and I would have just done it the way Dad did it, kind of mindset. So what I ended up doing, and I think this is unfortunate for some people, because it doesn't work out so well, is they don't always learn how not to raise kids. That circle kind of continues, and they do the bad things that their parents did that were bad. And fortunately for me, I was able to see that and pay attention, that I learned what not to do. And so I wanted to avoid those things. And that's kind of where that mindset came in, where I was always feeling the situation. And therefore I made decisions based on my instincts and my feelings instead of what I was taught was right. So I guess maybe that fits into that, but that's a good question to think about.
Or even based on what a future harbor master would do.
Wow. Just going to roll that right in there. Just going to bring it. Listen, I just fill up boats and I help tie them down. That's really all I do. I manage some teenage kids. So
more about that and more questions about Nate and his time on Alone when we come back after a word from our friends in the Odd Pods Media Network. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Russ.
This is Kyle.
This is Michelle.
From the Infectious Groove Podcast. Join us every Monday for the most fun you can have with a music podcast. The Infectious Groove Podcast uses a positive and fun approach as we take time every week to share our jammy jams, then dig into a thought-provoking topic discussing all decades and genres of music. You can find the Infectious Groove Podcast on all major podcast platforms, or you can head to infectiousgroovepodcast.com to find us there and subscribe. We might have a controversial opinion here or there, but we always have fun with it.
Oh, I'm sure I'll say something dumb.
Subscribe to the Infectious Groove Podcast, part of the Odd Pods Media Network.
And we're back with Nate Weber, season 8 contestant of the History Channel's hit TV series Alone. So kind of we got to the point in your story, Nate, where we talked about like what brought you to the show and sort of the orientation that you have a couple weeks before. So let's go to the drop. I've heard other contestants talk about drop shock. That probably doesn't apply to you as much, considering your military background. But what are you thinking once that boat finally leaves on what looked like a pretty crummy day for you? It was a little foggy and overcast. But what are you thinking at that moment?
Well, the truth. Well, we can talk about the truth, the stuff that nobody knows about.
Yes, please.
Which is fun for day one, and this is more personal truth for me. The orientation, and I probably shouldn't do this. It may not be good to make my wife is rolling her eyes saying don't do it, but so I'm an intermittent faster. I eat probably 4 hours a day. I fast for about 20 hours, and so that was normal for me. I've always done that. I can hang at about 190. And stay in shape and be fine with that. My body's used to that. And I'm a carnivore primarily. I just eat meat and fat. So that was always my diet. And when I went to orientation, it was just food. And I got to 205 and hoping to get some fat on me. And I'd been eating crazy trying to get calories on me. I skipped intermittent fasting. I was eating all day. I was drinking like 2 beers at lunch just to get empty calories. I don't even drink that much, but I just drank just to have the wasted calories. And I got there, and on the second week of orientation, I decided I was going to go back into my routine because that's where I feel the most clear. I feel the healthiest in that. So I just started stockpiling breakfast meats and stuff, and then I would do my feeding window. So I lost another 5 pounds doing it because my body just goes right back to itself. But they ask you on launch day, they're like, what do you want in your breakfast burrito? Well, mind you, I've been eating every day, breaking my fast between 2 and 4 in the afternoon. And by the way, we're going to wake you up at 3, feed you a burrito at 3 a.m. and send you packing. We're going to do all these photos and stuff. And when the sun comes up, somewhere out on Lake Choco. And I'm like, okay. So I just want meat in my burrito. I don't want any crap. I don't need anything else. And I don't really want it, right? But that side of me is like, everyone else is getting this damn meal right before they go out there. So I ate it. Well, needless to say, we landed midway like an hour later, and I was running in the darkness in the wilderness at Lake Choco before I emptied my pants. So it was a horrible, horrible day one. It was a horrible day one. I'll have to just say that. It was not a good burrito, and anyway, so I did have I was on the verge of dehydration by the time I landed, so I wasn't really concerned about what was going on. I just wanted to survive the day.
To a great start.
Great start. Anyways, you can delete all of that if you want. That's fine.
Yeah, no, that's our bonus content. You should have had the Ron Swanson meat only breakfast.
Exactly. Oh my God, the meat sweats. Yeah.
Here come the meat sweats. Oh man.
But the drop shock. You're right. It's not a big deal for me. I've been in way worse situations than being alone and next to a beautiful lake with mountain glaciers, and so I was just like, this is it, and it's time to kind of mission mindset and see where, do my 5 and 15s and try to just walk around my area and see what it offers, because you always try to give them some credence to why did you choose this spot as a drop spot? Someone saw something. Is it just the ease ability to get a boat in here? Is this, why did you pick this location for that? So I want to see what they saw and try to figure that out. I'm always thinking about that in this situation. So I wasn't even there 5 minutes and I kicked up a ruffed grouse, and he sat on a tree, and you watched me miss him. I missed twice on that grouse. That was 5 minutes after landing. I don't normally shoot grouse from 5 yards away with a bow and arrow, so
you had other things to worry about. You were all tense.
I was like, this is it. And first of all, I was like, do I even need it? I had that shitty burrito. I'm sorry I said that, but
you're fine.
Anyway, so, but I was like, am I being wasteful? I don't even need this meal yet, but I still shot and missed. So, but anyways, I didn't have any issues with that. I mean, being dropped off and being alone has never been an issue for me. I deal with fear different than most people. It's just not an issue it's just nothing that bothers me, I guess. It doesn't get to me. And being alone doesn't get to me. So I knew those two things I had, I knew myself when it comes to that. And I guess the key to that is why is it easy for me to be alone, I guess, would be another follow-up before you guys ask it. But I guess the way to understand that is we have a tendency, and I'll say maybe more so now with these generations that are coming up with these online personalities, and they have these social media accounts, and they can be someone they're not. Mm-hmm. And they can display and take these pictures, and it's not true, and it's not who they are. When you're alone and you're faced with true situation where it's just you don't have anyone else to bounce off of your validation or your lies about yourself or your insecurities that you hide from, and they can reassure you of all those insecurities that they're not real. If you go into the situation with any of those insecurities, they'll surface, and you'll have to deal with them. They will scream and holler at you until you acknowledge them and you admit to yourself that you've been hiding. I don't have any of those. I am a direct person all the time in my life. I don't leave anything hidden. If I make a mistake that hurts somebody, I own up to it immediately, because I can't live with that stuff in my life. I just learned a long time ago that it rots me out from the inside, and I'd rather keep everything positive. And so I'm honest, even when people don't want me to be honest. And I've lost friends because of it, because I've told the truth about situations, and I just stay true to myself in that. So I didn't have any issues or demons to raise. I did. We talked about fathers. It didn't make the show, but when it hit October, it's probably like day 20. I had this clarity where I had 3 different dads throughout my life, men that were with my mother, and I blamed the first one the hardest my whole life, because my mom did a really, really good job of painting him as this horrible, evil person. And so I was more in this mindset, to defend my mom mindset, even though she wasn't, the greatest in that situation. But she had cast him in such a light that I just despised him. And I had thought about it. He'd the only one of them that actually took an effort to do something good for me. He's in his 20s, and he knows he's not a quality dad, so he offered me to another man and her to do a better job than he could. So I thought that that's a positive. And my mom wasn't a saint. I'll say that. I mean, I'll be nice. And she passed 2 years ago, so out of respect, I'll just say that she wasn't a very at least her and my relationship was tumultuous at best. So, but I reminded her a lot of her first husband. So that's where I think that came out in her bringing me up. So I realized that I gave her an opportunity her entire life with my children to be a grandmother. And I never let that man know his grandkids. So, and her and I did not have a relationship as an adult. There was no relationship there. But she was a great grandmother to my children. They loved Mina, and it was fantastic for them. And that's happy for me. That gives me happiness, is that my kids got to know their grandmother. But sitting out there, I realized that I never let him meet him, like, until 3 days ago. Like, he's in Michigan, and he came up, and that's the first thing I did when I left the show, is I reached out to him and apologized and said, if you're ready and you want to come and meet these kids, come get it. Because I owed him an apology for that. But I think about it it wasn't intentional. You know, I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't isolate him or alienate him and think doing it out of, malicious act at all. It was because I was so busy with everything else. I didn't have time to take a break. I was so mission focused on getting the homestead done and my family out of that tiny house, because we were, 2 years is a long time in 200 square feet. You need to spread out. You need to get your kids and, get them around the other kids up here. And so I was so focused on that it's always the next station. You see something in life and you focus on it, and let's get there, and you focus and you get it done, and you don't take a second to look around. And that's what that show did for me, is it gave me pause, and I got to actually stop at the station and get out and walk around, and think about my life and see where I was and take stock in it. And then that's where it brought me. So that's a good thing, in that sense, that it allowed me to take a nice pause in life and slow down, and I'm right back at it, unfortunately. So
when you did your sit down with Clay on one of the YouTube videos I was watching, just sort of to just understand you a little better and do some research for this, the one that came up, it was like, this show is hard if you've got demons or if you've got unresolved issues. And if I could maybe play back your answer to your question back to you, I think what I hear you saying is, for those people that might be true, you can prepare by getting good with a bow and getting a tight grouping at 30 yards. You can learn to do a gill net, but you can't mentally prepare unless a guy like you're pretty sure of your life philosophy. It's been tested, it's proven true for you, and you lean on it strongly. And I think that's why being alone and fear doesn't bother you, is because that part is kind of in check. What you can't maybe plan for is drinking squirrel poop, or like the illness part, right? You know what I mean? It's that that piece of you is pretty thought through, and like your life philosophy piece makes a lot of sense. It's those unexpected variables, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I would just add a note that I don't think it was the squirrel that kicked me. So
I don't either. That was just
I had run. No, that's a great end to it. Of course, that last episode, it wasn't the squirrel, but I was in a place where it had rained for 2 days. On day 22, I had stood up and said, I think I'm going to tap today. I had laid in bed for 20 hours and did a full assessment of my body. I was a Navy corpsman for 12 years, so I know my body, and I was a cardiovascular tech, so I know the heart and I know how the body perfuses and the required energy for all that stuff to happen. And I was laying down for 20 hours and my toes were still numb. I wasn't perfusing I was just kind of isolated to my core. My blood was just hanging out at my core. I wasn't lightheaded or anything. I was compensating real well, but my body because it was such a gradual over time that it just slowly started to taper down. I was running out of energy. And they give us, you've seen somewhere written online that one of the things they pack with us is emergency rations and stuff like that. There's just something they give that's an emergency ration, and I was out. So that was it. Like, I didn't have anything to eat, and I was kind of surviving on those. I had rationed those down, and day 22, I ate my last ration, and then 23 and 24, I was in full ketoacidosis. Like, I was nauseous, I had a headache, and that was because I was burning straight muscle. There was no more fat to burn, and my body had just, I knew it immediately when I woke up with a headache that something had changed. And then I was at the fire, and I was thinking, I was good. Like, my health had changed, and the only reason I made the phone call was because we're supposed to inform them that our health, a change in our health. And so I woke up with a headache and was nauseous, and so I called and notified him, and he's like, okay, you're good. And I was like, you know what? And right on the whim, I just said, you know what, I'm done. Like, I didn't plan on tapping when I made that phone call. I just called because something was there, and again, I paid attention, and I was like, no, I'm done. Like, I don't have any reservations about that. I knew when my time was up. So, but yeah, that's right.
No, I was mostly joking about the squirrel, and I know
the squirrel poo, dude. I swear, it was like, what a little dick. Like, if that's true, like, he's hanging out, knows I can't eat him, and then I just leave my pot hanging in a tree during a rainstorm, thinking I'm just gonna collect some rainwater. And it's dark out, and I'm just chugging, and I go to walk and rinse it out, and I look down, and I was like, who sits above my pot? I mean, I'm getting it. He's up in the tree. I get it. But anyways, yeah, it was funny.
On the med checks, like, I know that's something that they've said in previous seasons, that they try to keep the interaction to an absolute minimum to sort of maintain that feeling that you're truly alone.
Right.
Is that pretty true? Like, do you feel like they keep it pretty bare bones, give you new batteries, and
you don't see them. Like, the only time you're going to see them is for the discrete med check, but the batteries and you're turning your memory cards. It's a blind exchange at the beach. So you get a text message that says they're going to pick up used memory sticks, place them at the beach in the bag, and you do it. And then at the end of the day, you go back, and there's a new bag with new memory sticks, and there's nobody there. If you run out of batteries, the same thing. You just request them, and they hang them like Santa Claus under the tree. So then the med checks.
That's what drew me to Alone. Sorry to cut you off. It's because, like, it feels authentic. Some of those early days, like early to mid, 2000s and 2010s, there's all these survival shows, and the guy is surviving, and there's a crew of 20 on the other side of the camera with his lunch.
Right.
And
right.
And it was like, I appreciated the effort that this show seems to have made. But again, I'm on my couch as a casual observer. I'm not you having actually been there, and I'm sure there are pieces of it that are maybe different than pure light touch, but it's pretty authentic, and it comes off very believable.
Yeah, you are without a doubt, alone. Of course, the later days they try to stick a med check in the week of the 20s, day 24 or somewhere around there, and then they base it on the condition of the contestants. So it's not a guaranteed every 21 days or anything like that. The first one is going to be just over 3 weeks in usually, and then it's definitely based on the condition. And we were really, really limited this year with all the restrictions that we could or couldn't do when it came to food procurement, and so that I'm sure that they ramped those up after I was gone, but.
I have to let my co-host get a question in because I could just talk your ear off.
Chat.
You've been quiet over there, Dylan. What you got?
Well, can I interject with kind of a silly one you can play with?
Yes.
I'd love to hear you toy around with this whole inner voice, your Scottish and Irish inner voice.
Oh my gosh.
Where did that come from?
I don't know. I tell you.
How much entertainment was it?
I'm telling you, it came out on the Beast. I would go down and go fishing, or I was making a knife, a bone knife, at the Bear Beach on Alone, where we had the black bear show up. And I had this crow land. We had buried the fat in the clay next to the water. So we had found the clay the fat from the muskox. We had found the muskox fat 8 days after we buried it in the clay, the water temp was so cold, we just, let's go see if it's rancid, and it stayed great. It was like a refrigerator. But it's all gray clay, and there was like a nugget that we didn't notice. And I'm sitting there, and this crow comes and lands 2 feet from me and picks this piece of fat up. How in the heck he knew it was fat? He picked it up and ate it, and then he decided to hang out with me the whole time. And my inner dialogue, for some reason, it's got horrible. I'm not trying to claim that I have anything. And I can't do it on the fly. It's only in my head when I'm alone do I let it kind of, it just comes out. But that's my inner dialogue. Is this what I think I would sound like if I was Scott? I mean, I am. I'm half Scott-Irish, but I don't know where that came from, dude. I don't know. I mean, it's fun for me, but it's entertaining. But I do have a little bit of it's not like a Southern draw. It's just Scott-Irish. It's the weirdest thing. Maybe I got an old ancestral DNA in me or something that just comes out. But
I thought maybe you watched Braveheart with your breakfast burrito.
Oh my gosh, yeah, right. Yeah, I was like William Wallace.
Entertainment. Has that stuck with you? Have you taken it home and you're working around, work inside? Is it still
No,
there?
it's only in those situations. It's the craziest thing. Yeah. Like it only came out on those two instances where I was alone in the wilderness.
Yeah,
maybe
the most obscure superpower ever.
It is. That's it. Yeah. Thanks.
That's
it. Obviously a sidekick, right? Yeah. I'm not gonna. I can't be a prime.
I just said William Wallace. I mean, we're talking Braveheart.
I speak with Scottish accent. Oh yeah, sidekick. That's funny.
That's awesome. Yeah. So we'll wind down from the alone specific stuff and just like get more general thoughts and maybe sort of like funny musings from the armchair critic, right? Like who watches the film, and you can dispel some of those myths. Or
Corey, before I let you fail, what were your wife's questions?
Oh, dude, good catch. My wife is very thoughtful, and she's always thinking about the wives and the husbands and the families back home. And that was her, a couple of things. Like, she was so interested in what happens between tapping and the fireside chat, because like Clay tapped on day 74. Yet there's like 4 days where he's still there. And was that a COVID thing, or does he go home and then come back? Like,
no, you cannot leave recovery until you refeed and you gain weight. They can't medically release you home until the doctors have signed off on your ability to retain your weight and you don't have any refeeding issues. So that's it. That's the only delay you get, is that you're just eating.
Yeah.
So
that was the assumption.
And it's not like you would think. Like, if I would have stayed in day 24 and caught a 400-pound fish, I would have eaten 40 pounds of it. Right? I mean, I would have eaten it right away.
Yeah.
When I tapped on day 24, I had a cup of bone broth. Like, there's no sense to me on that. Like, if I'm in the wilderness, I'm allowed to eat 40 pounds of fish, but now that I'm back home, I can only eat this cup of bone broth. Yeah. So that's a weird, but I get it. They're really concerned about tapering you back. But I had lost 35 pounds in 3 weeks. So that was a really rapid loss of weight. So
well, that was my question. So I'm glad you said that. I felt like, knowing nothing, if once you're back and you've tapped out, it had to be regulated to a degree, your food intake medically, to make sure you're not consuming too much food and liquids all at one time. It just seemed like that would make the most sense and give you a couple days to sleep and eat and make sure you're clear.
Yeah.
No, that's absolutely right.
And then Sherry's second question was like, what was the experience like for your wife and 5 kids? And then how was re-entry? I mean, is that
so
different for you again because of their
experience? Different. I'm just saying the benefit of my past, and that's why I thought it would be I had an upper hand in the alone side of it, is that I've been gone a long time. So I've spent more than 2 years away from my wife and kids, and I have confidence in her ability to handle the house and not have any issues, and it's kind of like your life just goes on pause. It's really interesting. It's like everything just the second I'm home, you just push play and everything's the normal. Your kids are a little bit bigger, but that's a year later. This was only like months, and so it's not that big a deal. Other people, that it'd be like looking back at my first deployment and first separation from family. It's a little bit different, but it's not. Again, alone's not combat. You didn't have anything, trying to kill you every day. It's just the personal challenge out there in isolation, and you do miss your family, but that's growth.
Yeah.
That's fantastic growth. That's a chapter in your life you'll never forget, and it puts things in perspective. So
another way that you were probably uniquely prepared for the show that perhaps others aren't, right? That the regular pattern in your life. We
Right.
had back in episode 88, we had a professional comedian on, Kellen Erskine, and he was on America's Got Talent, and he had a pretty negative experience with that show. He was like, like they just shoot a ton of footage and pretty much just tell whatever story they want to tell. So if they want to sort of present you as a not bad guy necessarily, but if they want to sort of lean it toward you not getting moved on, they can definitely do that.
Right.
And then, as I mentioned earlier, in your sit down with Clay Hayes and Jordan Jones, you talked about accurate reflection. And you kind of hit on it earlier tonight. Like overall, like if you were to just sit back and assess like how it felt to be there versus how your story was portrayed on the show, do you feel like it was pretty accurate to who you are, your life philosophies? Like, did it feel pretty true? Did they honor kind of the way that you would have told the story if you could?
Yeah, I mean, I was grateful to be the voiceover for a couple of the
they
the show
wrapped up
enders.
season,
I was like,
they wrapped up episode 2 with your voiceover.
Yeah, I was honored that I was like, that's crazy. And I got a couple of promos to myself that it was just me talking. I was like, this is awesome. Maybe I'll get a gig out of it from my voice or something. Maybe someone wants to hear me talk. But
the dulcet tones of Nate Weber.
That's so. But yeah, I think that the overall they can't. I understand the complexities of trying to snip it down into to giving what you think you need, the meat of me, and I really appreciated them letting me, my inner dialogue at least, and my philosophy on life and how I approach things, because I hope that, in the end it's just to help people that may struggle in those situations and a little bit different perspective on how to approach them. But when it comes to the activities, it's really that I feel like all I did was fish and build a pier. But I hunted, I explored the entire property, I crossed that Glacier Creek 3 times, I hiked up into the mountains, and I mean I did a lot of hunting. I set snares, and I thoroughly checked my entire location, walked my whole shoreline looking for trash. I only found that 3-foot section of rope that I made that bed out of. But in the end, it didn't. It's still those I start to think about, would those have mattered? That they still have to make me out to be what they want, and they did a good job, I think, allowing just my philosophy on life to come out, my problem solving with the pier and trying to think of a way to get further out in the water. That shows who I am in that sense. So I think that's practical. So I liked it. So
that has to leave you feeling pretty good overall, just like feeling like you were accurately reflected and presented. Yeah, that's really cool.
And I wasn't even concerned. Like, you have to talk to doctors. You get counselors that talk to you because you're on a TV show, and some people don't handle that well. And him and I just always just chatted about life. Like, I don't need any help. I'm completely fine. They could make me out to be the worst villain in the world, and it wouldn't bother me. I know who I am on that side of it. But it was good to see that. I was happy with the editing and happy to just show that side of me made the big screen or the little screen.
Well, we have a series of questions from our loyal listeners that I'd love to get into. But before we do that, Dylan, Kendall, anything else from you while I pull these up?
I just want to the fishing, I just wanted to comment on the pier because it was such a highlight of on the show anyway of your time there, and it was for me watching that was because I fish. I enjoy fishing, and this year I've just started getting my kids into it, and for the most part, like for my kids, all they've done with me is bank fishing, in public ponds and stuff.
Right.
And when you're bank fishing, so many times you just think to yourself, if only I could be out in the middle of that water.
Yeah.
This would go so much better. But I never think build a pier. You thought build a pier, and for some reason, like I don't know why, but that still amazes me.
Out of the box, Kendall. Out of the box. We talked.
That's exactly, it's out of the box. Like even if I did think build a pier, I'd be like, no, you can't build a pier. You built a pier out of nothing.
And look, and to your credit, Nate, I don't know any superhero sidekicks who would build a pier.
Right.
All right.
That's it.
That's
You're
Batman level, Braveheart.
That's Batman. It's good. I'll take that. I appreciate that recovery. It's good. Back on the list.
All I think is, how do I get a better job so I can afford a boat?
That's right. Yeah. I thought about a raft too, but I was weighing the wind and the seas, and I had 2-foot waves on that most days. It was blowing straight in my face, so there was no hand casting. So the boat was hazardous. The pier was, I could at least get out there, so I had to weigh the two, and I decided to burn the calories on the pier.
That's where your strategy based on your location makes such a difference, because for Coulter that made sense because he had a kind of a quiet little area.
He did have a cove, south of me. Yeah.
So he had a cove that he could build a boat, but yeah, for your situation that just didn't
would have been feasible.
Cool. So let's get into some rapid fire questions from some of our loyal listeners. Thank you guys for sending those in. If you're not already, please join our Facebook group, From the Middle for the Middlers. And Sean asks, if you could do it again, what item did you not bring that you would not leave home without, based on our conversation earlier about assessing people's item choices?
I can't rapid answer that, but I do appreciate the question. The issue is I brought every single item I was allowed to orientation. And then you found out what you were allowed to take. Like I would have brought a gill net in a second, but we weren't allowed to use it till day 45.
Yeah.
So the chance of something happened, but a gill net was on my list until we found out we couldn't take it.
Vance asked, based on that, were there any items you brought that you didn't get enough use out of to justify?
Yeah, like, oddly enough, the axe was kind of a waste. So I used it for the pier, but I could have managed with my saw and my Leatherman, and it helped out. But I think in the end, the axe just came along as a catalog. I just recorded my fish and mushrooms, and that's it.
Yeah.
So maybe the axe.
My hunting buddy and good friend Drew asked about the mental aspect, but we kind of already covered that. But I wanted to shout him out. I have one, and it's a little bit what Kendall was talking about earlier. Like, I think for armchair viewers, they're like, why wouldn't you just fish all day? Like, because that just seems on the surface for the non-outdoorsman, that seems like the easiest thing versus trying to, deadfall trap mice and,
Sure.
you trap rabbit lines, like
snares. Yeah.
I mean, and probably they're just not showing you on the bank of the lake for 12 hours a day.
Well, that's absolutely right. I fished all day. I walked my banks to try to find better water and deeper water. I was building lures. I walked up to the creek head where this water's just rushing out from this glacier, and it's real sooty, full of glacier melt water, and I floated a lure out with all of my fishing line. As deep as it would go, I let it fly. Just as far as it would float it out in the middle of that, and I got nothing. I mean, it was nonstop. So the best thing I could do was passive fish all day, because you were only allowed 3 hooks in the line in the water at one time. So if I was going to passive fish, I couldn't do both. So I just set the passive line, then came up with better ways to passive fish, so that there was always a fly, a beard fly or a artificial fly in the water all the time. Technically, I wasn't supposed to do it at night because I had to go check it every 12 hours, but there were some nights I forgot to take them out.
Sure.
So,
I'll never forget the season, and I forget which it was, but it was kind of the hippie chick who did a lot of foraging. She's like catching so many salmon that she starts to throw them back.
yeah, it's insane.
Other people were
insane.
starving, and she had like massive salmon. She's going, I'm just catching so many of these.
Yeah, that's
And I'm
insane. Yeah.
Location, man.
We were only allowed 2 trout a day unless it was a bull trout, and then you were only allowed that 1 bull trout. And then the possession limit was double that, so I could only have 2 bull trouts on me at any time. So it didn't matter if I smoked them; I couldn't fish for any more fish.
Yeah.
So in rainbow, I could only have 4 on me at one time. So even if I caught them, I couldn't keep them. I'd have to eat them right away. So that's a hard process to store up for winter. So it made it really difficult.
That's the thing I think we're just not privy to, is a lot of those local restrictions. And I know
Sure.
one year there was an animal that there was a disease going around, so nobody could harvest that animal. And
Yeah.
it was like, yeah, that's
frustrating.
something we're not seeing when we're
Yeah.
thinking about, you know.
But I did fish a lot.
All right, one more from the founder of the Odd Pods Media Network, CJ. When asked, what would you ask a contestant from Alone? He says, why the hell would you do that? And I think we already covered that. Nate loves a challenge. And yeah, man, it's been an absolute blast having you and getting to chat with you a little bit. Thank you for your time. Thank your family for your time. Anything else you want to say? Where can people follow you or just check in with you from time to time? I know you're not big on the socials, but
I mean, I think I have an Instagram page, Bearded Scout, I think, maybe, from my military days. And then I think I'm on Facebook, but I mentioned that to some kids and they said that's for 60-year-olds. Apparently Facebook is for old people now.
yeah, we're learning that.
So I would hesitate on that, but I do have an Alone page on Facebook, but I'm not savvy and all that, and I just think that it's too consuming.
You don't need to be.
But just
keep
you found me on. I think you found me on Instagram, so I'm really appreciative of you reaching out and getting this set up, man. It's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks for telling your story. Thanks for spending time with us. Thanks for just encouraging people to spend more time in the outdoors. That's one thing I love that you said in one of your interviews. You said that you tell your kids, like, just go get lost in the woods for 3 days. You'll learn something about yourself, about nature, about creation. And I guess when you have a lot of land, you can do that. But that's really cool, man.
Yeah.
And you're an inspiration in a lot of ways. And I hope that like more people realize that it's innate. Like we're drawn to nature, whether we realize it or not. It just gets covered up with things like traffic and corporate America, and
it does 9 to 5
in the suburbs and things like that.
It does. Yep.
Anyway, thanks a ton, man. This has been a blast. Really appreciate your time. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll catch you next week on From the Middle.